Well, hello there, all you amazing peeps out there. Forced to make this video by the person that actually wrote the script for this video about Manjaro is not art. I actually think, I don't know if I've done a video about it, but I think I've talked about this before. I was about to say thought. So we're going to listen to this spirited goddess here. Oh, well, that's a female. I don't know if he identifies as a female. But this spirited god here about Manjaro is not art. Again, recommended from the writer of said script that he's reading up of here. He's probably adding his own stuff in there.
Everybody, this is Tech Hut. In this video, what we're going to be doing is talking about Arch and Manjaro. Many people love Manjaro as a clean and easy way to get into Arch or even Linux in general. But there are many who claim that Manjaro has diverted too far away from Arch to give it that consideration. So today we're going to be going through that, what both Arch and Manjaro are, how they're different, and why more people might need to make the distinction that Manjaro isn't Arch.
True, and the biggest, easiest way to figure out if someone is like the parent distribution. Where do they get, like, where's the repositories? So you see all of these amazing distributions that are distributions and not just copies of art or different selection of packages from art that I really don't even recall a distribution of Respawn. Why is that? Well, they just take the software from the art repository, make some selections, slap a wallpaper on it, kiss it goodbye and say, hey, this is my new creation, I'm the smartest person to ever live. You didn't do anything, you just took already existing packages, repackaging a system and called it a distribution. No. What Manjaro does is they're basically forking arts, and then they have their own repositories, their own testing methods, their own way of determining how things is going to do.
So first, what is Arch? Arch is an independent rolling release distribution that is known for being very customizable and bleeding edge, but not for being as easy to install. Basically, your hand isn't held.
Like, if you can read and you can comprehend written or readable words, I can't speak. Like, if you can read a book and you can understand what the text is telling you, you can install Arch the Arch way. You don't need to be a rocket science to do it. You just need to understand English. So if you can read English and you have an understanding of basic computer wordings, you can install Arch. You just have to read what it fucking says. It's honestly, if you cannot read the man pages of Arch and understand, you may need to brush up your English skills a little bit here, because it's really not that difficult. It just looks complicated. But if you take it one step at a time, it's not hard.
Held at all, and you're forced to either learn how to install your system manually from scratch, including partitioning through the terminal, installing the actual Linux kernel, and setting up your bootloader and desktop environments.
So basically, you're going to do manually what Ubiquity or Cat and Mouse is doing automatically. That's the only difference here. You're doing something manually that otherwise would be automated. And if that's what floats your boat, if that's what gets your thing going under the table, sit there and do that manually instead of actually getting things done and do work or game or what you want, hey, you go nuts. You go nuts.
Basically, the customizable feature isn't really an option because you are going to be building your system. There is a TUI installer being worked on, but it's not finished as of recording.
How old? Oh, 10 months old. So yeah, it's a better now. It's kind of flushed out, I think.
In this video, and it's still in the experimental stages. And even with that, Arch still doesn't hold your hand during regular usage. Every once in a while, there will be an update that requires manual intervention during the update in order to fix something. In fact, going to the homepage of Arch, most of the latest news posts are things telling users that they need to manually intervene to fix an update. Now, this does make Arch sound terrible, but it's actually quite cool when you really get into Linux.
So, no, it's not cool. It's cool if that's what you want. Like saying it like this, like saying that, oh, this is something you should want to do. Again, some people like to think and some people just want to get shit done. Most people just want to get shit done. This is like me as a mechanic saying to you, here's your car. It will blow up in your face once in a while and you have to go out and meddle in the engine. But that's cool because you learn about your car. How many of you guys and girls and aliens and robots that are driving to work is going to use me as a mechanic if that's my sentence to you call me and the engine broke down? Yeah, you just have to shank it, yank a fucking screwdriver into the starter motor or, just loosen this bolt a little bit and replace these spark plugs and stuff like that, and you're good to go. Now we know a little bit more about your car. You should be happy for that. That's cool. You know more than the fucking accountant at your work. Yeah, no. Like, just no. And this is why, as many knowledgeable Linux people will say, that they don't recommend Arch for someone that actually have critical work to do, because they don't want to tinker when they have critical work to do. They want to do the critical work.
It's because you configure your system almost however you want. Arch is also popular thanks to its amazing wiki for documentation, and the
Arch wiki is the best wiki of any Linux distribution out there and can be used for every Linux distribution. Let's get that out of the way.
User repository, which has loads of community-driven and user-generated packages and installation scripts. So now let's quickly go over what is Manjaro. Manjaro is another rolling release distribution based on top of Arch, and it has many similarities. Manjaro is closer to a more traditional distribution that you just install, like Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Fedora.
Like, to me, a traditional distribution would be a static release distribution. Manjaro is definitely not like a traditional distribution because it's not a static release distribution. It's a rolling release distribution. That's not traditional. So alone by that fundamental detail there, you cannot call it a traditional Linux distribution. Maybe it's traditional in the choices of desktop, like it comes with a pre-installed desktop, or you choose a desktop, or it's traditional in the way that you acquire it by going on to a website, downloading an ISO and installing it with a traditional install, and you're getting a traditional out-of-the-box experience. So how traditional is it? It's a really weird thing.
So on and so forth. It comes with its own set of packages, and some of the packages may be slightly older because Manjaro holds back packages until they are fully tested. They do this with 3 repositories: stable, testing, and...
This right here should already tell you that Manjaro is not Arch. Just this right here is the concrete proof that it's not Arch. It's just utilizing Arch repos to make the job easier and more convenient for them to then develop Manjaro. Why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because they don't want to go out to the Git repos and do all of the same work that the Arch people are doing. Why should they? It makes no sense. So that's why they're then basing it on Arch, and because Arch comes with some technologies they want, instead of reinventing the wheel.
Unstable, each with progressively newer and less tested packages. Unstable would be the closest to Arch, but like Arch, you're on your own if something goes wrong. Manjaro should in theory be easier to run than Arch because it has the more stable package-based pre-installed tool.
So, it should not be easier to run because it has more mature packages. Easiness has something to do with how do you run the system, how do you use it, how irritating is it to use, how easy is it to do stuff in it and stuff like that. I think what they meant to say here is it should be more reliable, stable, reliable, put in the word there. Easy is not the word that I would put in there.
Tools such as PAMAC for installing packages, and also you don't have the issue where every time you need to do almost any task, you have to know what package you need and decide between the options of what package you're going to install.
That's not... what?
You have to know what package you need and decide between the options of what package you're going to install to do the job. Manjaro...
I don't get that. Like, does the writer think that when we're installing Arch Linux a package, we are going to be like sudo pacman install a VLC? We're getting like 10,000 different versions of VLC. Well, if you use the AUR, you may get like stable testing and the Git repo, but you have to enable the AUR to do that. That's like you, the user, making a decision as a user to now not overcomplicate, but to further complicate your experience with Arch. Out of the box, you don't have to do that. So I think this is a little bit of a misunderstanding that they believe that everyone is running an AUR. Not most, but a lot of people don't run the AUR. And people that may run third-party repositories, they go to like repositories that is software from the AUR, but it's pre-compiled, pre-packaged, so you're not, you're just getting basically pre-compiled packages in case that the AUR have to compile something for you. And they also test it a little bit more. So I used to use 2 or 3 different repositories when I was running Arch, where it was binary files that I was getting. It was basically just like enabling a PPA, because I don't want to deal with this thing here. And yes, if you have more than one, or if you have more than the traditional repositories, you could get duplicated of software, but you have to manually enable those software. You have to go in to the config files and manually or add those repositories. And if you know how to do that, you also know that you have to then make a selection. They're making it out like you're just installing vanilla Arch and you're going Pacman, install VLC, and now we have 10 different fucking versions of VLC. That's not the case. It's not the case. So again, this is a little bit of misinformation, I think, about the Arch ways.
Manjaro pre-installs almost anything you need to do basic work, which makes it easier for Linux beginners. Although I still wouldn't call Manjaro a beginner distribution because it's still technically considered to be an Arch-based system. Now I will note the application's pre-install depends on the desktop environment and the actual edition you choose.
Yeah, that's a little bit bullshit. Have some fucking consistency in your releases.
And even in Arch, some desktop environments, such as KDE Plasma, will have specific commands that will grab nearly all the packages you'll need from that ecosystem to get started.
Yeah, and that's made so, or they make those meta packages or group packages or patterns, depending on what distribution you're using, to make it more easy and convenient for the end user that don't want to sit and be, oh my god, did I remember to install this package, and then they get install and Dolphin is not in there. So the developers make meta packages, patterns, blah blah blah, what you will call them, so they can say, well, if you don't know what you are doing, or you are confused or not sure what you're doing, just install this, as they call it here, meta package, and you are guaranteed to get everything you need to have a functioning desktop. That's why they're there.
Before we dive into the similarities and differences, I'm going to need to thank the sponsor of today's video, Arch. This website to get even 400, still a few more similarities to cover. They both use Pacman as the default package manager. They both have relatively newer packages compared to other distros. Although Arch will always have slightly more bleeding edge software, they both support things like the AUR, which in my opinion is the primary selling point for any Arch-based system.
Yes, it is, but you need to understand that when you're using the AUR, 9 out of 10 times why your system is not working, or you will get problems, or even viruses and malware and spyware, is because of the AUR. Go look it up, peeps. There have been software in the AUR that have had not favorable presets enabled and stuff like that.
And usually if you have a bug on Manjaro, there is a solution on the Arch wiki. 8 times out of 10, the Arch fix should also work on Manjaro, although asking a Manjaro question on any Arch-related chat might get you laughed out. However,
yeah, and that's bullshit, and this is one of the reasons why the Linux community need to fucking get their act together. It don't matter. Just be happy someone is using a fucking Linux distribution. We can't afford to be angry at each other, laugh at each other for not using the correct thing.
However, many people treat Manjaro just like it's Arch with an installer, and that's like calling Ubuntu Debian with a different installer.
Love it, yes.
It could be argued Manjaro and Arch are completely different things. There are loads of differences between Manjaro and Arch, just how there are loads of differences.
Here's a really good way of saying it. People that say Manjaro is Arch, it's like saying that my brother's my twin. You get what I'm saying here? And people that say that Manjaro is totally different from Arch, it's like saying that my brother is not in the same plot line as me. There will be similarities and there will be things that where they act together, but just like me and my brother, we are individual human beings. Manjaro is an individual distribution, and more individual than, let's say, Easy Archer, where Easy Archer is basically just it's not a one-egg twin of Arch, but it's a twin of Arch.
Between Ubuntu and Debian. The main key difference being the packages. Since Manjaro uses its own repositories compared to Arch, this can...
So that could be the DNA, you know, you're sharing some DNA and then you have individual DNA.
And probably will lead to some things just straight up breaking. For example, you do have to be careful when you're using an AUR package on Manjaro because AUR packages are built to run on Arch. So if you're running it on Manjaro and the AUR package requires a dependency that is newer than what is on your Manjaro system, it could break the package, or even worse, depending on what you pulled from the AUR, your entire system. Manjaro also...
Like, put a hand up for everyone that have dealt with that fucking issue before.
Has its own package management system in addition to Pacman called PAMAC, and yes, the naming scheme is not very helpful.
Nope.
PAMAC includes a GUI frontend for package management and a CLI utility that is slightly easier to understand compared to PAMAC.
And again, this is the whole issue with reinventing the wheel and duplicating work to further confuse the user. What they should have done here is just make a front end for Pacman and then maybe have aliases for commands in the terminal. So you could use like sudo install sudo package install, and that will then do sudo pacman -S and then the package name. The aliases is a thing. Silent Robot that do his respin of arts do that a lot to take complicated commands and simplifying them for him and the user.
Pacman. For example, a system update is PAMAC update instead of the pacman-syu that you'd see in Arch. But it does have both of them, so you can interchange this however you see fit. Honestly, I love PAMAC, and I do find myself installing it on vanilla Arch or any other Arch-based distribution, as it does include the GUI, its very own AUR helper, and options for other formats like Snap Flatpak. On top of that, Manjaro has a bunch of distribution-specific things, such as its own separate settings manager with several tools. This includes a tool to help you automatically install hardware drivers, and there's a kernel tool that will allow you to...
That's probably what I like the best about Manjaro, is the kernel tool.
Switch between kernels with a graphical interface. Basically, just treat Manjaro and Arch like Debian and Ubuntu. Basically, don't install Manjaro because you want an Arch-based system. Install Manjaro because you want to install Manjaro.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You should not look at Manjaro and say, oh, I'm an Arch fucking hashtag. I use Arch, by the way, idiot.
Manjaro definitely has its benefits, and there is nothing wrong with using it. For example, I think that they create some of the best GNOME customizations out of the box. And if you're looking for an Arch-based distro, there are certainly distros out there that are just Arch with an installer, or at least a lot closer to vanilla Arch. So if you do want an Arch-based system, I would recommend one of those instead.
Yeah.
Some of those would include distros such as EndeavourOS. EndeavourOS is very close to vanilla Arch, and is a...
Hey, I would even go and make a certain guy from Arizona happy and say maybe you should go with Easy Arch. You get what I'm saying here?
Essentially Arch, just with a much better installer and a convenient welcome app for configuring the system and setting it up. There's also distros like the Arch Linux GUI, there's Artix.
That's not around anymore, by the way. ATUI is not around anymore.
And a lot more. You could also just straight up use a script to help you install, like the pre-installed CLI script we mentioned earlier, or others such as AUI and ArchFi. So if you're looking for a distro that is Arch with an installer, there are better options in my opinion. And if you're looking for more information, I have my EndeavourOS comparison, which I do recommend you check out. And of course, Manjaro does have its place and use cases, so no problem.
Of course it does. Like, we can... I'm one of those people that think we have way too many distributions, but we can also, like... There's the argument that they all have their place. The problem with all the distributions for me is not that I don't see them having a place, because if one person is using it, it has its place. It's doing a lot of unnecessary parallel programming, as I call it. That, like, a lot of people are trying to do the same thing instead of working together. So instead of having 100 developers working on an issue, you have 100 people working independently, trying to solve that solution, not talking together and doing it in 100 different ways. And that's slowing down progress, if you ask me.
Problem if you use Manjaro, but it seems to be mismarketed as a distro by a lot of Linux people as something to use if you want to get something Arch-based, and I'm starting to disagree with this.
Good. Yeah. Overall, I agree with what they're saying here, that Manjaro is not Arch. I've been saying this for almost the day one I made my channel. Because I, as the writer and apparently also as Tech Hub has noticing here, is that, yeah, they are brothers and sisters, but they are not the same. It's false advertisement, or it's bullshit, or what you will call it, to say to someone, oh, you want to be part of the Arch crowd, just run Manjaro, and then they go in and do it, and then they talk to Arch people, and the Arch people like, Manjaro noob, and they get frustrated, and they're not going to use Manjaro at all anymore, or Linux, because they got a bad experience. And that's what I have tried to talk to people about for fucking 4 years now, or something like that, is that we need to be realistic with what Linux can. The video I made about the expectation of running Linux. It was not me saying you should not run Linux. It was not me hating on Linux. It was just like the majority of people are going to experience this with Linux at some point. So I like videos like this because it helps giving people the right expectation. It's not overselling, it's not underselling, trying to give people the right expectation. And sometimes giving people the right expectation is telling them what you have to look out for, where the pit holes are, where the creeps are. Like if you're using specific hardware, you have to say to them, you know what, that is not going to work that well under Linux. And that's not being shitty towards Linux, it's being realistic. And most Linux people are massively unrealistic with Linux, and it's driving my fucking testicles out of my body. See you all later. Bye bye.